So this video is going to look at question 7b, and we're referring again to the two texts from the summer 2017 paper, which is the extract from Grey is the Colour of Hope, the memoir, and then the one which is called Don't Dread Downsizing by Libby Purvis. We looked at these for 7a. 7b is worth more marks than 7a, it's worth 14 marks, and part of the problem with this one is that it's at the end of the paper when you're running out of time, probably running out of steam as well, and it's really important to get as many ideas down as you can for this. You can get 14 marks just by writing two sides, as long as it's really well done. So here's some ideas about how to go about this. Okay, let's have a look at the question and then we'll have a quick look at the mark scheme and what you're actually asked to do for this paper as well. So, first of all, it's a compare question. So here we're looking for similarities and differences. You've done similarities for question 7a, so it's more interesting and it's likely to get you more marks. If you look at differences, by all means lead in with similarities, but then look at how the two texts are different. It's about the writer's ideas and perspectives in here, and you also need to use quotations or line references in order to support your ideas. If we have a little look at what the mark scheme is asking us to do, level 1 is that you don't write very much. Level 2 is where you only consider maybe one idea. Often if you only write one paragraph or write only about one text, you might get a level 2. But if we look at these areas here, which is probably where you want to be, at the mid, and these are not grades, these are the levels on the mark scheme. A level 3 looks for a range. A range of ideas is probably about 3. And an explanation, so that's where you might see quite simplistic PEE paragraphs. A level 4 would see a wider range, so you're probably looking at about 4 good paragraphs, 4 good ideas there. And this time there is an exploration. So that goes a little bit further. It looks at language, it looks at structure, it looks at theme. So really when you're coming to, you make your point, you give your evidence, then you say a little bit more about it, not just 1 or 2 sentences and move on. You explore that idea in a bit more detail. Level 5 is varied and comprehensive. So again, you're looking at 4 to 5 reasonably good ideas, comparisons. This time you're looking for analysis. And analysis literally means to break down. So you would actually then pick out a key word or you'd pick out a key piece of punctuation and you'd be able to then explore that in more detail. So that's how you'd be working towards those top marks. If we take the question that we've got here and we look at the two texts that we've got, the kind of ideas that we might come up with for this, a really good way in is always to look at what person it's in, and both of these texts are in first person. Okay, they're in first person because they're about personal experiences, but they're very different personal experiences. So Ratushkinska is talking about her experience in prison. So it's quite a negative experience in text 1. Whereas text 2, and obviously I'd be writing these as full paragraphs, is about a much more positive and a feeling of accomplishment because this time it's about downsizing. So my way in probably would be to think about this text in terms of what person it's in, what kind of the purpose of writing it, and consider those ideas first of all. Okay, then I'd start and think about maybe some ideas to do with the language and structure. Now you will have covered some of the similarities in question 7a, and again you can lead with those, but then you might want to explore some of the differences in more detail. So I think the tone of these two texts is quite different because obviously one is about getting rid of your possessions in a much more forceful and unrelenting way because she's in prison and she doesn't have a choice. Whereas the other one is about an optional kind of a choice that they're making, that Libby Purvis and her husband are making to downsize. So the tone is really quite different. And again, you could pick out some keywords which might show this tone. Like I've said, you can consider language use. So again, you don't go into this in 7a, but you can in 7b. So you might pick out some key words. Like you'll notice the difference between the way that treasured is used in text 2 when she's being quite motherly. She's talking about her emotional attachment to these things like photographs and so on. Whereas in text 1, she talks about her nearest and dearest and uses these superlative adjectives, which they're emotional because they're personal. They're linked to the mementos that she has of the people that she can no longer be around. So again, the language is also quite different. There's also quite a lot of numerical language. Again, it's a similarity. So in text 1, that's very much about the space, because she talks about the 30 by 30 by 70 space in their lockers, which is very specific to show how small it is. Whereas in text 2, she's quite celebratory, talking about how it's quite an achievement, quite an accomplishment to move to a small house with only 2 bedrooms. And so, again, that numerical language is being used. Books downsized by 1/3, so you can look at that too. Both of them give advice in different ways as well. So if I had time, that would probably be my final point. I would look at the fact that both of them give advice. Ratuszkinska is giving advice in prison about how to kind of keep your head down and not draw attention to yourself, and how to downsize in a not so emotional way. Whereas Libby Purvis is saying, oh, you can give stuff to charity, and you can find your quotations to show that as well. So if this was me, I'd be trying to kind of get a range of a good kind of maybe 4 to 5 points. If I run out of time for point 5, that's fine, as long as I've done these ones in detail. And I'd be making my point. So you can see here, here's my point. I'd be trying to give my evidence for each of these from text 1 and text 2. And then I'd be trying to kind of explain in detail and explore and perhaps analyse keywords, key ideas, and link them to the ideas and the perspectives. So you see there, ideas and perspectives that both of the writers have about possessions. And if I would be looking to do that, if I could do that over 2 sides, it doesn't have to be lots and lots of writing, but if I did that in enough detail, that would be enough to get into that top band, the top band which asks us for varied and comprehensive range of comparisons and asks us to analyse. And you could do that on 2 sides to get those 14 marks.